Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hey readers! Today, I'm turning up the heat on the podcast and getting a bit kinky. In this episode, I am sharing some of my favorite romance books that explore different shades of kink. And when I say kink, I'm talking about those various acts that someone or a couple finds pleasurable that others in a different context may view as unusual or not pleasurable. And I'll start off by saying that this isn't going to be a list of all BDSM books or even erotic romance books. I definitely have a BDSM book list and erotic romance book list up on the blog. So if you want to read more in those areas, then be sure to check those out. But today, I'm sharing 5 romance books that explore different types of kink that I think you'll enjoy. So here we go. Book 1 on my list of kinky romance books is one of my favorite romance books of all time, and that is Beautiful Stranger by Christina Loren. Oh man, I loved the Beautiful series, and if you haven't yet read it, then you're definitely missing out. It includes a number of their more steamy romances than their recent releases, and it follows a friend group that lives in New York City. And Beautiful Strangers is book 2, but can really be read as a standalone. So if you haven't read the first book, which you really should, then go ahead and pick up Beautiful Strangers. But it is a book about Sarah, who moves to New York City after her fiance cheats on her, and she ends up meeting Max at a dance club where things get very hot and heavy in a dark corner. And Sarah ends up running into Max again because he's friends with her colleague, and the two end up having these seriously hot run-ins where they have sex in public places because Sarah realizes that she has this kink for exhibitionism and the threat of getting caught. I mean, there's this really great scene in the book. The two end up getting it on in the New York Public Library, of all places. And it's really, really hot and such a great part of the book. And I am a huge Christina Loren fan in general, but this book really blew me away. I loved both characters. Max, gosh, he's this just sexy Brit, and I adored how he could see what Sarah needed and really had no issues in giving it to her. So it's a really great first look at exhibitionism, of which I think I'll probably be doing a separate podcast episode on in the future. So you probably haven't heard the last of this book, but I highly recommend it as a kinky romance book to explore if you haven't read it yet. Book 2 on my list of kinky romance books is Priceless by Miranda Silver. Now, this one is a new adult college romance, and also one that you can read on Kindle Unlimited, by the way. So definitely easy to pick this one up if you have a subscription. If you don't, you should. But this story is about Christina, who is supposed to be this perfect girl, but she's really on this downward spiral. She's quit the cheer team, she's getting into drug problems, and she's broke. So she ends up making this deal with Patrick, which is basically a sex for money pact. But it becomes this relationship where they both really get what they want. He's this dominant, dirty talker that just wants sex on the regular. And he sees that she's got this kink for humiliation that he is more than happy to supply. He calls her, his dirty slut and more. So you'll kind of get the picture of what this humiliation kink is as you read the story. And I will say the book is definitely drama-filled. It has its share of immature characters, but I was really captivated by Patrick, and humiliation kink wasn't really something that I'd read before, so it kind of hooked me. So give it a try if it at all interests you, and add it to your TBR list. Book 3 on my list of romance books that explore kink is Wicked Lust by Sawyer Bennett. This is the second book in her Wicked Horse series, and honestly, anytime I can mention her Wicked Horse books, I will, because these books are hot and so much fun to read. Wicked Lust is definitely one of my favorites in the series because it features my main man, Kane. Kane he's an ex-Marine who is now working as head of security for the exclusive sex club, the Wicked Horse. So it's basically his job to protect the people who use the club, but also to keep the club's existence a secret. But he also takes full advantage of the club when he's off duty, and he fulfills fantasies for club members because they come with some substantial bonuses, and the man is desperate for cash. So the kink in this romance that Bennett explores is this idea of fantasy play. And boy, does Kane deliver one heck of a fantasy scene for a married couple at the start of this book. And that scene, honestly, I still remember it to this day after probably reading hundreds and hundreds of romance books since finishing Wicked Lust. It was like that pivotal of a scene, I think, that has stuck in my memory. But as for the romance of the story, our heroine is Sloane, and she is an undercover reporter. So she's heard rumors about the Wicked Horse, so she essentially wants to expose it and the ties that it might have to a politician and his daughter. Well, her first night at the bar, she catches the eye of Kane, and they definitely hit it off. And the rest of the book is about Kane letting his guard down and Sloane falling for him, but yet not quite sure if she can give up her story. And then she gets up the courage to share her ultimate fantasy with him, which is a gangbang. And Kane makes it happen with some of the other fellows we've come to love at the Wicked Horse. And it's pretty intense, pretty awesome. So yeah, if you want to read a book about fantasy play as someone's kink, then you cannot pass up Wicked Lust by Sawyer Bennett. Book 4 of kinky romance books to check out is The Farthest Edge by Kristen Ashley. Now, if Kristen Ashley is writing it, you know you're going to get an epic story with really great character development, and that's absolutely true with this book. But this book does, I will say, fit the erotic romance and BDSM category. It's a story about a relationship that grows between Evangeline, who is a dominatrix, and her new sub, Branch. So this book made the list because I was fascinated by Branch's backstory and the reason that he craved his kink to submit. He has some major guilt going on from his past where he had to be in serious control in life and death kind of way, given his line of work. So he seeks opportunities where he can finally release that control. And he's so desperate for it that he actually puts himself in some really unsafe situations to get his kink. But finally, he and Evangeline make an arrangement and end up falling for each other in the process. Now, I honestly say BDSM books actually aren't really my thing, but I thought Kristen Ashley did a great job with Branch in this book and gave us a different look at someone's kink. So check it out if you want to read about male submission. Book 5 on my list of kinky romance books is Distraction by Nicole Edwards. Now this is book 8 in her Club Destiny series. I honestly haven't read any other books in this series, but this one just stuck out to me, so I read it and really enjoyed it. Though it's really more than just a kinky romance book, but it includes a kink that I wanted to share in this episode. I would actually characterize this book as a romance book that focuses on mental illness. And I did highlight it on my list of romance books that discuss mental illness on the blog. So you can also check it out there if you want. But this book is about Dylan, who is a man mourning the loss of his wife. And he's been struggling with some serious depression for the past 10 years or so in using alcohol to numb the pain. But then he meets, or I guess runs into again, Sarah, who is wrestling with her own struggles as her husband took his own life. The two have one night where they get kind of hot and heavy with a wall, but they aren't really in a place for anything more to develop. But then 3 years later, they meet again, and that's where their relationship takes off and gets going. But back to the kink. So it turns out that Dylan's kink is that he likes to share. He did with his wife, but then she wasn't really into it, so they stopped. But it's something that really turns him on, and when he shares that with Sarah, she's up for exploring it. And you get one really hot scene at the end of the book. So this book really isn't all about his kink for sharing, but it was something that really struck me about his character and has stuck with me about this book because that scene, gosh, lordy, it was freaking hot. So read it just for that if you want. But that wraps up my list of kinky romance books, and I hope I gave you a few books that piqued your interest and possibly made it onto your TBR list. If you have a kinky romance book to recommend, definitely share it with me at leslie@shereadsromancebooks.com. I would love to hear it. And happy reading. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.